The alarm went off at 6 in the morning, but Rebecca was already awake. She'd been planning this garage sale for weeks, and today was finally the day. Her husband groaned and rolled over, mumbling something about it being too early for a Saturday. But Rebecca was too excited to care. 3 years of living in their house meant 3 years of accumulated stuff that needed to go. By 6:30, she was already in the garage, pulling out boxes she'd spent the last month organizing. Old kitchen appliances she never used. Clothes that didn't fit anymore, toys her kids had outgrown, a lamp that seemed like a good idea at the time but clashed with everything in the house, the usual collection of things that somehow multiply when you're not looking. Her neighbor Tom walked by with his dog and waved. "Big day, huh? Good luck with the sale." "Thanks. I'm hoping to clear out at least half of this stuff," Rebecca called back, already sweating a little as she dragged a folding table onto the driveway. The neighborhood was quiet at this hour. Oak Valley Estates was one of those planned communities where everything looked neat and orderly. Perfectly trimmed lawns, mailboxes that all matched, trees planted at exact intervals. It was nice, really. A good place to raise kids. The HOA could be a bit much sometimes, but Rebecca had always followed the rules without any trouble. Speaking of rules, she'd double-checked everything the night before. The HOA handbook clearly stated that residents could hold 2 garage sales per year without needing any special permission. This was her first one, so she was well within her rights. She'd even made a note of the section number just in case anyone asked. Section 7.3, right there in black and white. By 8 o'clock, the driveway looked like a miniature store. Rebecca had arranged everything neatly on 3 tables, with a box of free items off to the side. She'd made signs with bright markers and posted them at the entrance to the neighborhood. Prices were marked clearly on little stickers. A metal cash box sat on a small table near the garage door, along with a pitcher of lemonade for herself. She was ready. The early birds started showing up around 8:15. There's always that group of dedicated garage sale hunters who arrive before the official start time, and Rebecca didn't mind. A woman in her 60s picked through the kitchen items asking about the history of a vintage mixing bowl. A young couple examined the furniture, measuring a bookshelf with their phones to see if it would fit in their apartment. "How much for this lamp?" an older man asked, holding up the brass monstrosity Rebecca had been trying to get rid of for months. $15, Rebecca said hopefully. "Would you take 10? Deal." She was just happy someone actually wanted it. By 9 o'clock, things were going great. She'd already made over $100, and several larger items had sold. People were friendly, chatting about the neighborhood and complimenting her organization. A mom with 2 kids bought a bag full of toys, and the kids' excitement made Rebecca smile. This was exactly what she'd hoped for. That's when she heard the car. A silver luxury sedan rolled up fast and parked right in front of her driveway, blocking part of the sidewalk. The engine cut off with an expensive-sounding click. Rebecca looked up from helping a customer and felt her stomach sink just a little. Linda Carmichael stepped out of the car like she was entering a courtroom. Designer sunglasses, perfectly styled, hair that probably cost more than Rebecca's monthly grocery bill, and that particular expression of someone who's about to ruin your day. Linda was somewhat famous in the neighborhood, and not in a good way. She'd appointed herself the unofficial enforcer of every possible rule, whether it existed or not. "Excuse me." Linda's voice could cut glass. She was already marching up the driveway, her heels clicking on the concrete. "This is completely unacceptable." The elderly man who'd been looking at some books glanced up nervously and quietly moved toward his car. Rebecca felt a flash of irritation. She'd been having such a nice morning. "Good morning, Linda," Rebecca said, keeping her voice pleasant. "Can I help you with something?" "Help me? Help me?" Linda stopped right in front of the main table, looking at the garage sale spread like it was a crime scene. "You can help me by shutting this whole thing down immediately." A younger woman who'd been browsing the clothes looked uncomfortable and started edging toward her car. Rebecca felt her jaw tighten. She hated confrontation, but she also wasn't going to be pushed around for no reason. "I'm having a garage sale, Linda. It's allowed under the HOA rules. Section 7.3 says residents can have 2 sales per year without—" "I don't care what you think you read," Linda interrupted, pulling out her phone with one hand while gesturing dramatically with the other. The rules have changed. There was a vote at last month's HOA meeting. All garage sales now require a $500 permit and 2 weeks advance notice to the board. Rebecca blinked. She'd been at last month's HOA meeting. She went to all of them, actually. It was part of her job to stay informed about local community regulations. There had definitely been no such vote. The only thing they'd discussed was whether to replace the neighborhood playground equipment, and even that hadn't been decided yet. "Linda, I was at that meeting," Rebecca said carefully. "There was no vote about garage sales. Are you calling me a liar?" Linda's face was turning red now, that particular shade of red that meant someone was about to make a scene. "I am the HOA Compliance Committee Chair. I think I would know better than you what was voted on." A small crowd had formed now. Several neighbors had come out of their houses, drawn by Linda's raised voice. Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down was standing on her porch with her arms crossed, watching. The Johnsons from across the street had paused their morning jog to see what the commotion was about. "I'm just saying that I attended the meeting and—" Rebecca tried again. "This is an eyesore." Linda gestured at the tables like they were offensive. "You're bringing down property values. You're creating traffic. This is a residential neighborhood, not a flea market." "It's one garage sale," Rebecca said, her patience wearing thin. "On a Saturday morning, it's completely legal." "We'll see about that," Linda said with a smirk that made Rebecca's skin crawl. She lifted her phone to her ear with exaggerated movements. "Yes, hello? I need to report illegal commercial activity." "Yes, I'll hold." Rebecca stood there, frozen. Was Linda actually calling the authorities on a garage sale? The customers who were left started packing up and leaving, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever was happening. Rebecca watched her successful morning evaporating in real time. "Yes, thank you for picking up," Linda said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I need a code enforcement officer at 2847 Oak Valley Drive immediately. There's an unauthorized business operation happening in violation of city codes and HOA regulations." "Yes, I'll wait right here for them to arrive." She ended the call and crossed her arms, looking triumphant. "The city will shut this down, and you'll be fined. Maybe next time you'll follow the proper procedures." Rebecca took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. She was angry. Angry at the disruption, angry at the lies, angry at the bullying. But she also felt something else. A little spark of satisfaction. Because Linda had just made a very big mistake and she had no idea. "Okay, Linda," Rebecca said quietly. "Let's wait for code enforcement together. I'm sure this will all get sorted out very quickly." The next 20 minutes felt like the longest 20 minutes of Rebecca's life. Not because she was worried exactly, more because she had to stand there in her own driveway while Linda Carmichael paced back and forth like a lawyer in a courtroom drama, occasionally stopping to make loud comments about people who think rules don't apply to them. The few customers who'd stuck around had all left by now. Rebecca's nice, organized garage sale had turned into a neighborhood spectacle. More people had come outside to watch. She could see curtains moving in windows across the street. Someone was definitely recording on their phone. "Great. Just great. You know," Linda said, pausing her pacing to examine her manicured nails, "I really don't understand people like you. We have rules in this community for a reason. They keep our property values high. They maintain standards. But there's always someone who thinks they're special, who thinks they can just do whatever they want." Rebecca didn't respond. She'd learned a long time ago that engaging with people like Linda just made things worse. Let her talk. Let her dig her own hole deeper. The code enforcement officer would arrive soon enough. "I mean, look at this mess," Linda continued, gesturing at the tables. "Junk everywhere, cars stopping in the street. Complete strangers wandering through our neighborhood. Do you even know who these people are? They could be criminals for all we know, casing houses, planning break-ins." "They're people buying used lamps, Linda," Rebecca said quietly. "Not exactly Ocean's 11. "Don't get smart with me," Linda snapped. "You're in enough trouble already. When the officer gets here, you're going to be cited, possibly fined. And I'm going to recommend to the HOA board that we pursue additional penalties for flagrant disregard of community standards." Mr. Chen from 3 houses down had walked over, standing at the edge of the driveway. He looked angry. "Linda, leave her alone. She's allowed to have a garage sale. I had one last month and you didn't say anything." "That was different," Linda said dismissively. "That was before the new rules." "What new rules?" Mr. Chen demanded. "I was at the last meeting too. There were no new rules." "The special meeting," Linda said smoothly. "Not everyone was invited. Only board members and committee chairs, obviously." Rebecca almost laughed. That was such an obvious lie. HOA meetings had to be open to all residents by law. There was no such thing as a secret meeting to change bylaws. But Linda was saying it with such confidence that Rebecca could see a couple of neighbors looking uncertain. "Linda," Rebecca said, keeping her voice level, "there was no special meeting. You know that's not how it works. And how would you know how it works?" Linda's voice dripped with condescension. "Have you ever served on the board? Have you ever chaired a committee? I've been involved in HOA governance for 12 years. I think I know a bit more about this than some random homeowner having an illegal yard sale." Mrs. Patterson had walked over now too, looking concerned. "Linda, are you sure about this permit thing? Because my daughter wants to have a sale next month to raise money for her school trip, and $500 is a lot of money." "Rules are rules," Linda said primly. "If your daughter wants to have a sale, she'll need to follow the proper procedures. Submit an application, pay the fee, wait for board approval. It's really very simple." "That's not what the handbook says," Mr. Chen said, pulling out his phone. "I'm looking at it right now. Section 7.3, 2 garage sales per year, no permit required." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "That's outdated. The digital version hasn't been updated yet. I have the newest copy at home. In writing, signed by the board president himself." Rebecca knew that was another lie. The HOA bylaws were filed with the county and couldn't just be changed without proper documentation and resident notification. But she stayed quiet. Let Linda keep talking. Every lie was just more evidence. A white truck with city markings pulled up to the curb. Linda's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. "Finally." "About time." A man in his 30s got out, wearing a city uniform and carrying a clipboard. He looked tired, like this wasn't his first unnecessary call of the day. He also looked a bit annoyed. Rebecca didn't blame him. It was a beautiful Saturday morning and he was dealing with neighborhood drama. Linda rushed over before he'd even closed his truck door. "Officer!" "Thank you so much for coming. I'm Linda Carmichael, HOA Compliance Committee Chair. This resident," she pointed at Rebecca like she was identifying a suspect in a lineup, "is operating an illegal business in violation of city codes and HOA regulations." The officer looked at the garage sale setup, then at Linda, then at the small crowd of neighbors. "Ma'am, it looks like a regular garage sale to me." "It's not regular," Linda insisted. "She doesn't have a permit. She didn't get board approval. She's violating at least 6 different regulations that I can cite right now." "Okay," the officer said patiently. He walked up Rebecca's driveway, and Rebecca noticed his name tag said Rodriguez. "Ma'am, do you have a permit for this sale?" "I don't need one," Rebecca said calmly. "I'm having my first garage sale of the year. Residents are allowed 2 per year under both city ordinance and HOA bylaws without any additional permits." "See? See?" Linda practically shrieked. "She's admitting she doesn't have a permit. That's a violation." Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. "Ma'am, please, let me do my job." He looked at Rebecca. "Can you show me the relevant regulations you're citing?" Rebecca pulled out her phone and quickly brought up the city code. City Ordinance 15.2.8. Residential garage sales are permitted up to twice annually per household without commercial permits, provided they're held on the property and don't block public walkways. She then pulled up the HOA handbook and HOA bylaws section 7.3, which mirrors the city ordinance. Officer Rodriguez looked at her phone, then nodded. "That's correct. This appears to be a legal garage sale." "No." Linda's voice had gone up about 3 octaves. "The rules changed. I'm telling you, there was a vote." "She's lying to you." "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said, his patience clearly wearing thin, "I can't enforce HOA rules that aren't filed with the county, and according to the city database, which I can access from my truck, the current HOA bylaws for Oak Valley Estates were last updated in 2022. Those bylaws allow garage sales." Linda's face was turning that deep red color again. "This is ridiculous. She's obviously broken some kind of rule. The traffic. The noise, the eyesore of it all. Having a garage sale isn't against any city ordinance, Officer Rodriguez said firmly. Unless she's blocking traffic or creating a legitimate nuisance. There's no violation here. I want to speak to your supervisor, Linda demanded. Ma'am, my supervisor's going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. This is a legal garage sale. Fine. Linda pulled out her phone again. I'm calling the police then. Real police. Not code enforcement. She's trespassing. She's harassing me. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez's voice had gone cold now. If you call 911 for a non-emergency, you could be cited for misuse of emergency services. I strongly advise against that. Rebecca watched Linda's face cycle through about 15 different expressions as she tried to figure out her next move. Several neighbors were openly laughing now. Mr. Chen had his phone out, definitely recording. This isn't over, Linda finally hissed, pointing at Rebecca. I'm going to the board. I'm filing a formal complaint. I'm going to make sure you're fined for every possible violation I can find. Trust me, I'll find something. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez said, and there was something in his tone that made everyone pay attention. Making false reports to code enforcement is actually a misdemeanor. I'm going to let it go this time with a warning, but if you make another false report, you will be fined, possibly charged. The color drained from Linda's face. False report? I didn't make a false report. I genuinely believed you told dispatch this was an illegal business operation. It's clearly a residential garage sale. You told me she was violating multiple regulations, but she's not violating any. That's a false report, ma'am. Rebecca finally allowed herself a small smile. This was going even better than she'd expected. But she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Actually, Officer Rodriguez, Rebecca said quietly, there's something else Linda should probably know. Officer Rodriguez turned to look at Rebecca with curiosity. The small crowd of neighbors had gone quiet. Even Linda stopped mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open slightly. There was something about the way Rebecca had said it that made everyone pay attention. What do you mean? Officer Rodriguez asked. Rebecca reached into her back pocket and pulled out a leather badge holder. She flipped it open and held it up. I'm Rebecca Chen. I work for the city attorney's office. I specialize in municipal code enforcement and HOA regulations. The silence that followed was beautiful. Rebecca wished she could have taken a picture of Linda's face. It went from red to white to sort of grayish-green in about 3 seconds flat. What? Linda managed to croak out. Officer Rodriguez's eyebrows shot up and then he smiled. Ms. Chen, I thought you looked familiar. You did the training seminar for our department last year, the one on property code compliance. That's right, Rebecca said, allowing herself to smile now. Good memory. Oh man, Officer Rodriguez said, shaking his head and trying not to laugh. So you definitely know the regulations. I should hope so, Rebecca said. I help write them. The neighbors started murmuring. Mr. Chen looked absolutely delighted. Mrs. Patterson had her hand over her mouth, clearly trying not to laugh out loud. A couple of people in the back were definitely recording on their phones now. Linda seemed to be struggling to form words. But you never said. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Rebecca said simply. You just showed up and started making accusations. False accusations, as it turns out. I didn't. Linda tried to recover. I was just trying to maintain community standards. That's my job as compliance committee chair. Rebecca tilted her head slightly. That's interesting, Linda, because I actually reviewed Oak Valley Estates HOA corporate filings last week for an unrelated case I'm working on. I like to stay familiar with the neighborhoods in my jurisdiction. And according to those official documents filed with the county, there is no position called compliance committee chair in this HOA. The murmuring got louder. Several neighbors looked shocked. That's not true, Linda stammered. I've been on the compliance committee for years. There's a landscaping committee, Rebecca continued calmly. A social events committee. An architectural review committee. But no compliance committee. You're listed as a member of the landscaping committee, Linda. That's it. Well, maybe the title is different, but everyone knows I handle compliance issues, Linda said defensively. Her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Handling compliance issues and having actual authority are two very different things, Rebecca said. And making up rules? Claiming there were votes that never happened? That's not handling anything. That's just making trouble. Officer Rodriguez was writing something on his clipboard. He looked up at Linda. Ma'am, did you tell Ms. Chen that the HOA had voted on new garage sale regulations? There was a discussion about it, Linda said weakly. A discussion isn't a vote, Rebecca pointed out. And even if there had been a vote, which there wasn't, those changes would need to be filed with the county before they could be enforced. That's state law, which you would know if you actually held any official compliance position. Mrs. Patterson spoke up from the edge of the driveway. Linda, did you tell me last month that I needed to pay a $50 fine for having my trash cans out past noon on collection day? Linda's face went pale again. That's a real rule. It's not, Rebecca said firmly. The HOA guidelines state that trash cans should be returned to storage in a timely manner. That's it. There's no specific time requirement, and there's definitely no fine structure for something that minor. Oh my God, Mr. Chen said loudly. She told me I had to pay $200 because my fence was the wrong shade of brown. She said it was a critical violation, and I had to pay immediately, or face legal action. More neighbors started speaking up, one after another.
She said my kid's basketball hoop was illegal. She threatened to fine me $300 for parking my work van in my own driveway. She told me I couldn't hang a bird feeder because it violated setback requirements. Linda looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole.
Those are all. I was just trying to help maintain standards. Did you collect money from any of these people? Officer Rodriguez asked, his tone much more serious now. Linda didn't answer. She just stood there looking at her expensive shoes. Linda, Rebecca said quietly, did you take money from neighbors for fake violations? They were real violations, Linda insisted, but her voice was barely a whisper now. No, they weren't, Rebecca said. And taking money under false pretenses is fraud. That's not a city code violation, that's an actual crime. Mr. Chen pulled out his phone. I have the receipt she gave me. She made it look official, with the HOA letterhead and everything. I paid her $150 cash because she said if I didn't pay within 24 hours it would go up to $500. I need to see that, Officer Rodriguez said. Several other neighbors started talking about fines they'd paid. The amounts ranged from $20 to $300. Rebecca did some quick math in her head. Linda had potentially collected thousands of dollars from people who didn't know any better. This is getting beyond my jurisdiction, Officer Rodriguez said. This is fraud, forgery, and possibly extortion. I need to file a report with the police department. He looked at Rebecca. You'll need to contact the HOA board president about this. I have his number, Rebecca said. We had lunch together on Thursday, actually. We're working on a city initiative about HOA transparency and resident rights. Linda made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. You know Tom? Tom Harris? Of course. He's been very cooperative with the city's new oversight program. I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear about all of this. I think I need to go home, Linda said faintly. Ma'am, I need you to stay here while I make some calls, Officer Rodriguez said. Don't leave the area. Linda looked like she might cry. All her earlier confidence and aggression had completely evaporated. She looked small and scared, standing there in her expensive clothes with her designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. More neighbors had gathered now. The Johnson family from across the street, the Patels from the corner house, young couples who'd recently moved in, older residents who'd been there for decades. Everyone had a story about Linda and her fake authority. She made me cut down a tree in my backyard, one woman said angrily. Said it was too tall and violated some regulation. Cost me $800 to have it removed. I love that tree. There's no height restriction on trees in backyards, Rebecca said, shaking her head. Not in city code and not in the HOA bylaws. I'm sorry that happened to you. The woman looked like she might cry, but from anger rather than sadness. Can I get that money back? You should talk to a lawyer about that, Rebecca said carefully. She couldn't give specific legal advice to individuals, but she could provide general information. But I can tell you that if someone defrauded you, you have options. Civil court, for one thing. And if Linda's actions constitute criminal fraud, there might be restitution as part of any criminal case. Officer Rodriguez was on his phone now, talking to someone in a low voice. He kept glancing over at Linda, who looked like she wanted to disappear into thin air. Rebecca looked around at her garage sale. The tables were still set up. The items were still priced and arranged. The cash box still sat by the garage door. It seemed almost funny now, all of this drama over a simple garage sale. A completely legal, completely normal garage sale that Linda had tried to shut down just because she could, or because she thought she could. "Ms. Chen," Officer Rodriguez said, walking back over. "Detectives are going to want to talk to everyone who paid money to Ms. Carmichael. Can you folks stick around or at least leave your contact information?" People started pulling out their phones, sharing numbers and email addresses. Mr. Chen had organized a neighborhood group chat within minutes. Someone suggested they all pool their documentation and receipts. Rebecca caught Linda's eye. The other woman looked defeated, humiliated, and terrified. Part of Rebecca almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she remembered all the people Linda had intimidated and scammed. People who'd paid money they probably couldn't afford because they were scared of getting in trouble. "You know what the worst part is?" Rebecca said, just loud enough for Linda to hear. "If you'd just been friendly this morning, said hello, maybe bought something, none of this would have happened. I would have had my garage sale, packed up by noon and gone on with my day. But you couldn't help yourself. You had to try to bully someone. And you picked the wrong person." Linda didn't respond. She just stood there waiting for the police to arrive, while the neighborhood she'd terrorized for years watched her fall apart. 2 police cars arrived about 15 minutes later. By that point, Rebecca's driveway had turned into an impromptu neighborhood meeting. At least 20 people had gathered, and more kept coming as word spread. Everyone had their phones out, either documenting what was happening or texting other neighbors to come over. Detective Lisa Morrison stepped out of the first car. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes that took in the whole scene immediately. Her partner, a younger officer named Kelly, started taking down names and contact information from the crowd. "Ms. Chen," Detective Morrison said, walking up to Rebecca with a slight smile. "We meet again, though last time it was in a courtroom." "Detective," Rebecca nodded. "The Henderson property dispute case, right?" "That's the one. Your testimony about zoning regulations pretty much sealed that case." She looked around at the garage sale setup and the crowd of neighbors. "So what do we have here?" Officer Rodriguez filled her in quickly. Rebecca watched Linda standing off to the side, looking smaller by the minute. Her expensive clothes and perfect hair suddenly seemed like a costume that didn't fit anymore. Detective Morrison listened carefully, taking notes. When Rodriguez mentioned the fake fines, her expression hardened. "How many people are we talking about?" "At least 15 so far," Rodriguez said. "Maybe more. They're still coming forward." "Okay." Detective Morrison turned to the crowd. "Anyone who paid money to Ms. Carmichael for alleged HOA violations, I need you to stick around. We'll take statements from each of you. If you have receipts, documentation, texts, emails, anything like that, please have them ready." Mrs. Patterson raised her hand like she was in school. "I have a receipt." She gave me an official-looking paper on HOA letterhead. "Me too," Mr. Chen added. "Plus text messages where she threatened to put a lien on my property if I didn't pay." Detective Morrison's eyebrows went up. "A lien? That's a serious threat." "She said the HOA could foreclose on my house," Mr. Chen continued, looking angry all over again. "I was terrified. I have 3 kids. I paid her the same day." More hands went up. More stories came out. Each one was worse than the last. Linda had threatened people with lawsuits, property liens, forced sales, even criminal charges. She'd created an elaborate system of fake violations and fake fines that looked just official enough to scare people into paying. One elderly man, Mr. Webster from the end of the street, spoke up quietly. "She got me for $400, said my mailbox was non-compliant and I needed to replace it with an approved model from a specific company. The company turned out to be her brother-in-law's business. The mailbox cost another $600. "That's kickback fraud," Rebecca said, shaking her head. "That's a whole separate charge." Linda finally spoke up, her voice desperate. I was just trying to help the neighborhood. Everything I did was to maintain property values. You don't understand the pressure of keeping this community nice. By scamming your neighbors? Detective Morrison's voice was ice cold. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come to the station for questioning. You have the right to remain silent. As Detective Morrison read Linda her rights, the neighborhood watched in stunned silence. This was really happening. The woman who'd terrorized them with fake authority for years was actually being held accountable. Rebecca's phone buzzed. It was Tom Harris, the HOA board president. She stepped away from the crowd to take the call. Rebecca, I just got about 15 texts from neighbors. What's going on? She filled him in quickly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Oh my God, Tom finally said. We had no idea. Linda always seemed so involved. We thought she was just enthusiastic about community standards. She was enthusiastic about making money, Rebecca said bluntly. Tom, you need to call an emergency board meeting. Tonight, if possible. This is going to blow up and the HOA needs to get ahead of it. Absolutely. Can you come? In your professional capacity? I'll be there. After the call, Rebecca watched as Detective Morrison walked Linda to the police car. Linda wasn't in handcuffs yet, but Rebecca suspected that was coming. The detective was being professional but firm. Linda's earlier confidence had completely shattered. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Ms. Chen? A young woman approached hesitantly. She looked like she was in her late 20s, maybe early 30s. I'm Katie. I live 3 streets over. I didn't pay Linda any money, but she came to my door last month and took photos of my house. She said she was documenting violations for the HOA board. She made me feel like I was doing something wrong just by living here. What kind of violations? Rebecca asked gently. My porch furniture was the wrong color, supposedly. My house numbers were too small. My garden mulch wasn't an approved type.
She had this whole list.
She said she was giving me a warning period to fix everything before the fines started. Rebecca felt her anger rising again. How many things did she want you to change? 12. 12 different things. It would have cost thousands of dollars to fix everything she listed. I've been saving up trying to figure out how to afford it all. Katie, none of those things are violations. Not in the city code and not in the HOA bylaws. Your house is fine exactly as it is. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? Linda was setting you up to scam you just like she scammed everyone else. But she won't be doing that anymore. Katie wiped her eyes. Thank you. You have no idea how stressed I've been about this. As the police finished taking preliminary statements, more stories emerged. Linda had targeted new homeowners especially. People who didn't know the real rules yet. People who trusted that someone on an HOA committee would tell them the truth. She'd created a climate of fear where everyone was worried about stepping out of line. Rebecca's husband finally showed up looking confused. I saw the police cars from down the street. What happened to your garage sale? Long story, Rebecca said with a tired laugh. Very long story. By early afternoon, the police had left with Linda and a stack of evidence. Officer Rodriguez had taken dozens of statements. Detective Morrison had copies of fake receipts, threatening texts, and forged documents. The case was solid. The neighbors slowly started to disperse, but not before organizing. Mr. Chen had created a group chat for everyone who'd been scammed. They were planning to hire a lawyer and file a class action lawsuit. Mrs. Patterson volunteered to collect all the documentation and create a master spreadsheet of who paid what. We should have done this years ago, Mr. Chen said to Rebecca. We should have compared notes, asked questions. But we were all isolated. We all thought we were the only ones having problems. That's how people like Linda operate, Rebecca said. They keep everyone separate so no one realizes there's a pattern. As the crowd thinned out, Rebecca finally looked at her garage sale. Half the items were still there. She'd made maybe $150 total, not exactly the successful sale she'd planned. But you know what? She didn't even care. Tom called again around 3 o'clock. Emergency board meeting is set for 7 tonight at the community center. Can you come prepared to explain the legal situation? I'll be there, Rebecca promised. That evening, the community center was packed. The board had expected maybe 20 people. Over 100 showed up. Every seat was filled with people standing along the walls and sitting on the floor. Tom called the meeting to order, looking overwhelmed. I think everyone knows why we're here. The board learned today that Linda Carmichael has been collecting unauthorized fines from residents using false claims about HOA violations. We are horrified and we want to address this immediately. The crowd erupted. People shouting questions, demanding answers, wanting to know how this had happened. Tom held up his hands for quiet. I've asked Rebecca Chen to explain the situation. For those who don't know, Rebecca works for the city attorney's office and specializes in HOA law. Rebecca stood up and walked to the front. She'd changed out of her garage sale clothes into something more professional. She'd brought her laptop and had a presentation ready. Here's what you need to know, she began, projecting calm authority. First, what Linda did was not authorized by this HOA board. Second, the fines she collected were not real. Third, every person who paid money has legal recourse to get it back. And fourth, this board is going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. She spent the next hour walking through the real HOA bylaws, explaining what was actually allowed and what wasn't. She showed them how to access the official documents filed with the county. She gave them a handout with her office's contact information for anyone who had questions in the future. Knowledge is power, Rebecca told them. Linda got away with this because people didn't know their rights. That changes now. The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. By the end, the board had voted unanimously to remove Linda from the landscaping committee. They'd also voted to implement new transparency measures, including posting all real rules on the HOA website and sending out quarterly reminders about resident rights. As people filed out, dozens stopped to thank Rebecca. She'd turned what could have been a horrible experience into something positive, not just for herself, but for the entire neighborhood. 3 weeks after the garage sale incident, Rebecca sat in her home office reviewing the final documents for the Oak Valley Estates case. It had been a whirlwind month, and things had moved faster than anyone expected. Linda Carmichael had been formally charged with fraud, forgery, and extortion. The district attorney's office had built a solid case with all the evidence the neighbors had provided. Receipts, text messages, forged HOA documents, threatening emails. The paper trail was extensive. Linda had been scamming people for at least 4 years, maybe longer. The total amount she'd collected, just over $23,000. $23,000 from neighbors who trusted her, who believed she had authority she never actually had. Some people had paid multiple times for different fake violations. The elderly Mr. Webster alone had paid over $1,500 across various made-up issues. Rebecca's phone rang. It was Detective Morrison. Thought you'd want to know, the detective said. Linda took a plea deal this morning. 3 years probation, community service, and full restitution to all victims. She also has to pay a $10,000 fine to the state. No jail time? Rebecca asked, feeling a bit disappointed. First offense, and her lawyer argued she was having some kind of mental health crisis. The judge felt probation was appropriate given her age and lack of criminal history. But here's the good part. She has to sell her house to pay everyone back. She's moving out of state to live with family, Rebecca smiled. So the neighborhood is rid of her, completely. And get this, as part of her probation, she's banned from serving on any HOA board or committee anywhere. Ever. It's written right into the court order. After the call, Rebecca walked outside to get the mail. It was a beautiful afternoon. Kids were playing basketball in the driveway across the street. Someone was mowing their lawn. Normal neighborhood sounds. Mrs. Patterson waved from her garden. Rebecca! Did you hear the news? About Linda? Just got the call. No, the other news. The HOA board approved the community garage sale event for next month, first Saturday of November. Everyone can set up at the same time. It's going to be like a neighborhood festival. Rebecca laughed. That's fantastic. Whose idea was that? Yours, actually. At the emergency meeting, you mentioned it might be nice to have an organized event where everyone participates together. Tom loved the idea. The garage sale Rebecca had tried to have that Saturday never really finished. She'd been too busy dealing with Linda's mess and then helping the HOA board reorganize their policies. Most of her stuff was still sitting in boxes in the garage. But now she'd have another chance, and this time it would be a community event instead of just her dealing with everything alone. Over the next few days, Rebecca received messages from neighbors thanking her. The class action lawsuit had moved quickly since Linda had agreed to full restitution. The judge had ordered her to pay back every penny with interest. People were actually getting their money back. Mr. Chen sent a group message to the neighborhood chat. Got my check today. Every dollar I paid Linda plus interest. I'm taking my family out for a nice dinner to celebrate. Similar messages flooded in throughout the week. The elderly Mr. Webster said he was using his reimbursement to plant a new tree in his backyard to replace the one Linda had made him cut down. Mrs. Patterson was putting hers toward her daughter's school trip fund. Katie, the young woman who'd been stressed about the fake violations, said she was finally sleeping well at night knowing her house was actually fine the way it was. The HOA board had made significant changes too. Tom had worked with Rebecca to completely overhaul how the community operated. They created a new website with all the actual bylaws posted clearly. They set up a question and answer system where residents could submit questions anonymously and get official answers. They started a monthly newsletter explaining real rules in plain language. Most importantly, they established a rule that no committee member could ever collect money directly from residents. All fines, if any were actually warranted, had to go through the management company with proper documentation and board approval. No more opportunities for someone like Linda to operate in the shadows. 2 weeks before the community garage sale event, Rebecca received an unexpected visitor. A young couple who'd just moved into Linda's old house stopped by with cookies. "We're Dan and Michelle," the woman said with a warm smile. "We wanted to introduce ourselves and say thank you." "Thank me for what?" Rebecca asked, confused. "We heard the whole story from the neighbors," Dan explained. "About what you did, standing up to Linda and helping everyone get their money back. The realtor told us Linda had to sell quickly because of legal issues, so we got the house at an amazing price. But more than that, everyone's been so welcoming. They all say the neighborhood is completely different now. Better." Michelle nodded enthusiastically. "Back in our old neighborhood, the HOA was a nightmare. People were afraid to even paint their front door without permission. When we were house hunting here, everyone we talked to said Oak Valley Estates had really turned things around recently. They said it became a real community instead of just a bunch of rules." Rebecca invited them in for coffee, and they chatted for over an hour. Young professionals, no kids yet but planning to start a family soon. They'd chosen this neighborhood specifically because of what they'd heard about the positive changes. After they left, Rebecca sat on her porch with a cup of tea, thinking about how strange life could be. She'd just wanted to have a simple garage sale, clear out some old stuff, make a few dollars, enjoy a Saturday morning. Instead, she'd ended up changing her entire neighborhood. The Saturday of the community garage sale was perfect weather. Sunny, mild temperature, light breeze. Rebecca set up her tables early, but this time she wasn't alone. The whole street was lined with families setting up their own sales. It looked like a street festival. The HOA had organized it beautifully. They'd advertised in local papers and online. They'd set up a map showing which houses were participating. There was even a food truck parked at the entrance to the neighborhood. People came from all over the city, not just to shop, but because they'd heard about the neighborhood that had stood up to an HOA bully. The local news had covered Linda's case, and Oak Valley Estates had become somewhat famous as the community that fought back and won. Rebecca sold almost everything she'd wanted to get rid of. But more than that, she spent the day chatting with neighbors she'd never really talked to before, helping Mr. Chen price his old tools, watching Mrs. Patterson's daughter raise money for her school trip, meeting Dan and Michelle's families who came to visit and see their new house. Around 3 in the afternoon, as things were winding down, Tom stopped by Rebecca's driveway. "I've been authorized by the board to present you with something," he said formally, then grinned. "We took a vote. You're our new honorary rules consultant. Completely voluntary, no actual responsibility. But if you're ever willing to answer questions or review something for us, we'd be grateful. And you get this." He handed her a framed certificate with the HOA seal. It read, "Presented to Rebecca Chen for extraordinary service to the Oak Valley Estates community, and for reminding us all that the best neighborhoods are built on respect, truth, and looking out for each other." Rebecca felt her eyes getting a little misty. "You guys didn't have to do this." "Yes, we did," Tom said seriously. "You changed everything here. People aren't afraid anymore. They know their rights. They feel like they're part of a real community. That's because of you." As the sun started to set, Rebecca and her husband packed up the last of the tables. She'd made almost $400 from the garage sale. But the money wasn't the important part. Looking around at her neighbors, Laughing and helping each other clean up, sharing stories about the day, that was the important part. Her husband put his arm around her shoulders. So was it worth it? All the drama with Linda? Rebecca thought about it. About the scared faces of people who'd been bullied and scammed. About Mr. Webster getting to plant his new tree. About Katie being able to sleep at night. About Dan and Michelle choosing this neighborhood because it had become a place where people looked out for each other. Yeah, she said with a smile. It was definitely worth it. Later that evening, as Rebecca was carrying the last box back into the garage, she noticed something stuck to the bottom. A little price sticker she'd written weeks ago before any of this happened, 50 cents for an old picture frame. She laughed and peeled it off. That garage sale seemed like it happened in a completely different lifetime, back when the biggest problem in her life was too much clutter. Before Linda, before the investigation, before everything changed, she went inside and hung the HOA certificate on the wall in her office, right next to her law degree. Two very different achievements, but both important in their own way. One proved she knew the law. The other proved she knew how to use it to help people.